All righty. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I am Marty Warren, the National Director for the United Steelworkers Union. We're here today. We're here today because workers in Sault Ste. Marie and across Canada are under attack. Trump's reckless threats to impose 25% tariffs have put thousands of jobs at risk, disrupts our economy, and puts entire communities like Sault Ste. Marie in peril. It isn't just about the trade policy. It's not about all trade. It's about families and livelihoods and the future of our industries. Let's be clear. Canada is not the problem. I'll say that again. Let's be clear. Canada is not the problem. Our industries are deeply integrated. Steel crosses the border multiple times before it ends up in a finished product. Algoma ships about 60% of their output to the U.S., and 61% of its revenue comes from American customers. These tariffs will hurt workers, communities on both sides of the border. Steelworkers know. Steelworkers know what it means to fight. And today, we're making it clear. We will fight back against these tariffs with everything we have. But while we're standing up for jobs, sadly, some politicians in Canada are playing political games to advance their own agenda. This is a time to put partisanship aside and come together to protect workers. If you're not fighting these tariffs, if you're not calling for emergency plans for workers, you're not fighting for workers. But we are not alone. Labor unions and politicians across Canada are standing strong. Leading the change is someone who never backs down from a fight. It's my pleasure to introduce the president of the Canadian Labour Congress, Bea Bruske. Bea.
Thank you so much, Marty. I'm so proud to stand here with the United Steelworkers District 6 Director Kevon, as well as Local 2251 and 2724 presidents, Mike and Bill. Trump's plan to slap Canada with tariffs will be absolutely devastating for communities like Sault Ste. Marie, where workers and their families rely on industries like manufacturing and steel production. Workers need Canada's political leadership to recognize the urgency and to address it before it becomes a full-blown crisis. President Trump is a bully, and Labour in Canada will not back down from a bully. We will push back. We won't allow Canadian workers to become collateral damage in reckless trade disputes. This is going to require an all-hands-on-deck approach, especially when it comes to standing up for workers across our country. It is really important to note that there are 2.4 million jobs that are directly or indirectly dependent on export to the U.S. Last year alone, 1.8 million people worked in industries where 35% of the jobs depended on U.S. demand for Canadian products. Workers expect decision makers to stand up to bullies like President Trump and to defend their jobs and their livelihoods. We're glad to see that government is starting to listen to us and thinking at this scale. A good step will be to reinstate pandemic income supports for impacted workers. Governments will need to make sure that provisions are put in place this time in a timely manner to protect workers that will be impacted by reckless tariffs. But we also need to actually develop a strategy to safeguard Canadian workers from future risk. And that means we need to look at foreign policy, we need to look at trade and commerce decisions. That means diversifying Canada's trade partnerships and reducing our reliance on the US and aggressively accelerating connections to new global markets. That would ensure the long-term stability of our economic future and protect Canadian workers and will create new opportunities for growth for us. The most recent poll that the CLC has done across Canada showed that 77% of Canadians believe that the government should retaliate by placing tariffs on American imports. 75% of Canadians want Canada to cut off American access to Canadian resources like electricity, oil, and wood. And 80% of Canadians believe that American tariffs will increase our cost of living. 90% believe that there will be a negative impact on the US-Canada relations. The numbers don't lie. Canadians are alarmed and they expect a strong response from leadership and from their governments to protect jobs and to defend our industries. This is a very pivotal moment for unity in our country. Workers expect their leaders to come together for the greater
my bills. So for these workers, we owe it to them to say very clearly, we're going to fight like hell for your job. We're also going to make sure that we are stepping up to support you if these tariffs come forward. So our plan is this. To fight back, we need to stop these tariffs before they happen. We need retaliatory tariffs. We need to stop the flow of things that the states need, like critical minerals. But we also need to put in place better protections for our workers. So what we want to do is we want to build Canadian and buy Canadian. What we need to do is change our procurement rules, the way we buy things at the federal level. We need to make sure that we're favoring Canadian companies that produce the things that we need in our own country. We need to change the rules so that it favors also companies that have unionized workers that pay their workers a good wage. That is a way to fight back and protect workers by changing the way we spend our federal money. Make sure it goes towards workers. It's tied to companies that actually hire good paying jobs and unionized jobs. But in this time, we also see other leaders that are taking shots at Canada. I got a message for Pierre Poilievre, who says that Canada is weak. Canada is not weak because Canadians are strong. We're going to stand up and fight back. And while the Liberals seem more focused on themselves, I have a specific message to the Liberals. If you're serious about supports for workers, I'm demanding that the Liberal government call back Parliament. Let's put before Parliament a package to protect workers, support workers that are impacted by these tariffs, and to support communities. The workers behind me are for Sault Ste. Marie. Sault Ste. Marie is a community in a city that could be hard hit by these tariffs. So let's stand up for this, Sue. Let's stand up for all communities across Canada that are going to be hard hit by the tariffs. And let's put in place supports before the worst happens. So I'm calling on the Liberal government to recall Parliament, bring Parliament back. Let's pass legislation that supports workers because we're going to have an election in the spring. Nothing changes around that. We are going to be voting down the government in March. But there's still 2 months. If the Liberals think that they can wait 2 months before they bring in legislation, they are wrong. That would allow workers to suffer for 2 months. That is not the right way to do things. So I'm calling on the Liberals, recall Parliament, put forward protections for workers before Parliament. Let's get the opposition leaders together. Obviously, we need to support that kind of package, and then let's have an election in the spring. But my message is very clear. We're going to fight back. We're going to have these workers' backs. And to do that, we need to have legislation in place that support these workers directly with the supports. Je suis tellement fier d'être ici avec des chefs de parti, chefs des mouvements syndicaux. Je suis tellement honoré d'être ici aussi avec des travailleurs de cette communauté. Parce que ces travailleurs sont parmi les travailleurs qui vont être impactés par les tarifs potentiels de Donald Trump. Et ils ont peur. Ils ont peur qu'ils vont perdre leurs emplois. Ils ont peur que peut-être s'ils perdent leurs emplois, comment ils vont payer les factures? Comment ils vont rejoindre les deux bouts? Comment ils vont faire l'épicerie, payer les hypothèques? Ces travailleurs méritent d'appui. Et c'est notre demande de mettre en place des changements. On doit changer les règles pour mieux protéger ces travailleurs. Pour faire ça, je demande qu'on change de façon les règles concernant l'approvisionnement. On doit favoriser les entreprises au Canada qui produit c'est les choses dont on a besoin au Canada. On a besoin des règles qui favorisent les entreprises qui ont des travailleurs syndiqués. Les travailleurs qui sont payés sont bien rémunérés. Donc, ça, c'est notre plan. Et on sait que Pierre Poilievre est quelqu'un qui est appuyé par Elon Musk, qui va appuyer les milliardaires. Ça va faire mal aux travailleurs. Il n'est pas quelqu'un qui peut défendre les travailleurs. Et finalement, les libéraux, me semble, trop occupés sur leur propre affaire au lieu de défendre les Canadiens. Donc, je demande aujourd'hui au gouvernement libéral de rappeler le Parlement et mettre en œuvre, présenter un projet de loi qui défend les travailleurs. Présentez ce projet de loi si vous êtes sérieux et on serait là pour appuyer un projet de loi qui appuie les travailleurs. Je pense que tous les chefs de partis d'opposition vont appuyer quelque chose comme ça. Mais si le gouvernement libéral attend jusqu'au fin de mars, ça veut dire que tout ce qu'il propose maintenant, c'est des niaiseries. Il n'est pas sérieux, c'est faux. Donc, je demande au gouvernement libéral, rappeler le Parlement, présenter un projet de loi qui appuie les travailleurs et puis on va avoir une élection. Rien ne change. On va voter contre le gouvernement au fin de mars. On a 2 mois pour mettre en œuvre un projet de loi. I'm going to pass it back to Marty Warren.
Thanks, Jagmeet. Our next speaker is a steel worker. He is the District 6 Director, and for us, that is Ontario and Atlantic Canada, Kevon Stewart, who knows all too well the effects these tariffs will have on all workers, steel workers, all communities. Kevon.
Thanks, Marty. Good morning. As Marty says, my name is Kevon Stewart. I am the District 6 Director representing workers in Ontario and the Atlantic provinces. And we stand here today in the Sioux, a city that was built on the strength of steel and the hard work of the workers. But today, that's under threat. Donald Trump's threats to impose tariffs on Canadian exports is a direct attack on workers and our communities. These tariffs, which would take effective February 1st, would destabilize North Americans' deep integrated supply chains, put hundreds, if not thousands, of workers at risk, and communities that depend unless we fight back. That's why our union, the Steelworkers Union, will do anything and everything to make sure that we fight back on these tariffs. And this is just not a steel issue. It's also about a broader manufacturing sector and the families who depend on good-paying union jobs to put food on the table. Let's be clear. Trump's claim that Canada engages in unfair trade practices are completely unfounded. Targeting Canada will not help American workers. In fact, targeting Canada will only increase the cost of families on both sides of the border. As the international union that we represent over 850,000 workers in North America, the steelworkers will stand united and stand up to these threats. Workers' struggles don't stop at the border, and neither does their solidarity. We call on all Canadians, Canadian government, to act decisively to secure key economic sectors, safeguard jobs, and ensure the workers are supported. And we call on Canadians, all Canadians, to join us, because this fight is about defending our economy, our communities, and our way of life. We've faced tough battles before. We've come through stronger. Together, we will stand up for workers and fight back against these reckless and harmful policies. Thank you. And it's my pleasure to introduce the 2 local union presidents of the Sioux. Mike DePratt is from Local 2251, and Bill Slater is from Local 2724. And these are the true champions that's leading this fight right here in the Sioux. Mike?
Thank you. My name is Mike DePratt, and I'm president of Local Union 2251. We represent the hourly workers at Algoma, and that's about 2,200 people. There are a number of other people that will be affected, businesses, families, etc. This, in my opinion, is a trade war, and it's a trade war that we have to fight. We need to take a page out of Ukraine's book. There is no partisan policies happening in Ukraine. They are fighting a super country trying to take over a small one. We're fighting a large economy trying to take over a smaller economy. So we're calling on all our representatives, all parties, to set aside partisan policies, to recall Parliament, and to enact tariffs, counter tariffs against the United States. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Bill Slater, USW Local Union 2724 President, representing 500 members at Algoma Steel. As you all know, Sault Ste. Marie's economy runs on steel. It's not just Algoma Steel or Tenaris, it's also about the local businesses that rely on this industry. Trump's tariffs threaten not just our jobs, but the entire community. Our local union represents people who keep this operation moving. And these tariffs put all of us, workers, families, and local businesses at risk. Canada has always been a reliable trade partner. Whatever Donald Trump may claim, it isn't about fairness, it's about politics. These tariffs are unjustified. Sault Ste. Marie and Canadian workers should not pay the price. We won't stand by while our jobs and our communities are threatened. We will fight back together. As steelworkers, we always do. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Mike. And thanks to everybody that took time to speak today. Let's open it up for if there's questions from the press gallery. And if you could kind of direct your question, then we can get the right person up to answer it, or several may want a shot at it. Go ahead.
Good morning, Elaine Delamatia, Sault Ste. Mr. Singh, you're calling on the Liberals to bring back Parliament. Does that mean that you will support them with any retaliatory tariff measures that they want to implement at this time?
Yes, I want to be really clear on this. We are still going to be voting against the government at the end of March. But there's 2 months before that happens. And in those 2 months, if there's anything we can do to support workers, first and foremost, and to fight back against these tariffs against us, let's do it. So absolutely, we need retaliatory tariffs. I've said that. I think anyone running for prime minister needs to commit to that. On top of that, I've said, let's look at other things as well. We can cut off the flow of critical minerals. We know the United States needs Canada. We're the only reliable source of critical minerals. And it's also going to hit Donald Trump's buddy, Elon Musk, where it counts, because he needs those minerals for the batteries in his car plants. So let's be very serious about fighting back. But let's also put in place protection for these workers. There's workers behind me right now that are wondering, if we get hit by these tariffs, do I have a job the next day? Do I get to go into work or not? And if I don't go into work, how am I going to put food on the table for my family? How am I going to support my kids? How am I going to support my family? We need to let these workers know we got your back. And so I'm calling on Parliament to be recalled so that we can put in place those protections. If there's any legislation required to actually put in place supports for workers, let's get that done. I can't imagine any leader, any opposition leader that would oppose a package that supports workers impacted by tariffs. Furthermore, the Conservative leader himself has said to call back Parliament. So let's call it back. Let's get something done to support these workers.
Just as a follow-up, you're calling on a Buy Canada policy. That sounds an awful lot like a Buy US policy that President Trump is promoting himself. Is this a copycat measure, or do you have something different in mind? Can you please explain?
Yeah, our focus is on procurement. So the way we have procurement, the way we buy things in Canada, we need to favor things built in Canada. We need a more resilient economy. We know that we are very reliant on the US. We've been great neighbors. We believe in being good neighbors. It's a Canadian value. We want to support and look out for our neighbor, and we've done that. We've worked together with the United States. But now Donald Trump is threatening our country. And it's pointed out that we need to be better equipped to deal with threats like that. So one of the things we need to do is when we spend federal money, we need to be favoring and prioritizing companies that can produce things that we need in our own country. We also need to make sure that we are favoring when we have those bids on what company wins a bid, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's steel. We need to make sure that we are supporting companies that actually have unionized workers that pay their workers a good wage. We can change our procurement rules to do that, still complying with international trade agreements, still following all the rules. But we need to make sure that we are favoring things built in Canada by Canadians and favoring and supporting Canadian jobs.
Darren from Sault Ste.
So my question's for Mr. Singh. This trade war could get really rough. And it's been mentioned by one of the union leaders that we might need to bring in pandemic style supports. That could be a lot of money. Are you in support of that, Mr. Singh? And if so, how much? I mean, it's hard to project a dollar figure, but are you prepared to do what it takes if it gets that rough?
Yeah, let's start off by saying no one wants this war. Like, this is not something that Canadians want. We would want to continue to have good relations, to have an economy that works for working people across both borders. But the reality is that Trump is starting this war. If he moves forward with these tariffs, he's starting a war. And if he starts a war, we have to be ready to fight back. As the union leader said, we've got to fight back. That's what we got to do to protect Canadian jobs. The only thing that Trump understands is strength. We have to show strength. We have to show strength by saying we are going to fight back with whatever it takes. But in addition, as you mentioned, there are going to be workers that will get impacted in a trade war. The trade war is going to hurt us either way. But we cannot let workers bear the brunt of it. We cannot let workers bear the pain of this trade war. And that's why I'm calling on Parliament to be recalled so that we can put in place protections. What do they look like? Whatever works. Whatever is the best way to get supports to those impacted. They've got to be targeted because there's specific sectors that are going to feel the pain and specific communities that will feel the pain. Let's make sure that those communities and those workers are specifically supported. So whether that's pandemic style or another way, the goal is to achieve supports for those workers impacted so that workers aren't bearing the brunt of this trade war.
Just as a follow-up, it's being said that a lot of this tariff talk from Trump against Canada, against Mexico, is tied to immigration. If you clean up your border, stop letting undesirable people come in, we'll ease off on the tariffs. Canada is a land of immigrants. That would be offensive to a lot of people. What would you have to say to that, Mr. Singh?
Oh, I think that no one really believes that what Donald Trump is saying is based on the facts. If we look at the reality in Canada, far more illicit substances, illegal guns, illegal drugs come to Canada from the U.S. than the other way around. So that is, I think, a non-issue. But it is an issue for Canadians. We need to support our borders for ourselves, not for Donald Trump. We need to have a stronger protection around our borders to prevent those illegal guns from coming into our country, to prevent the fentanyl and the weapons that are coming into our country. So yeah, let's invest in supporting our border because it's good for Canada. And what has happened, why our borders are in the conditions where we need to strengthen them to protect Canada, is because the Conservatives cut massive amounts of workers from the front lines for border security officers, and the Liberals didn't reinstate those officers. I've spoken with Canadian Border Security Agency, and they said we are way understaffed right now. So we should absolutely, and New Democrats would immediately rehire those workers that were cut under Harper, and those cuts were maintained by the Liberals, and make sure that we've got enough workers on the borders to keep our borders safe so that we can keep Canadians safe. That's something that I believe in that would be good for Canadians.
Thank you. We now have Corey from CTV Northern Ontario.
Morning, Mr. Singh. I just wanted to ask about, I know this plan is very much a national strategy, but just if we're going to have maybe a reduced relationship with America regarding trade, do you support looking to new markets, contracts with new nations, to kind of make up the difference, if there is a faltering between the two nations?
I appreciate the question. Yeah, we should always be looking to diversify our economy. We have had a very strong relationship with the United States, a very good relationship. We have shown what you can do when you have a good neighbor and you work together. But we also realized one of the weaknesses is if you have someone like Donald Trump that comes in, it really threatens a lot of jobs in Canada. So because of that, we need to, at the first level, when we're spending federal money, we need that money to go to Canadian jobs, Canadian workers, and specifically unionized workers who get good wages. So we can make those rules to prioritize building in Canada and buying Canadian. But we also need to diversify where we sell our products. So you're absolutely right. We need to look to other countries where we can have better relationships, more trade. Diversify our trade so that if we are ever in a situation again where we got someone like Donald Trump threatening Canadians, threatening our jobs, we have a diversified economy that we can rely on. So I think it's absolutely something we should do, looking at other markets, looking at other places for us to sell our products.
Do you then think that if there is, less work for places like Algoma Steel, that maybe they don't have as much producing to do, that your plan would kind of be similar to like an EI type of program for their wages?
Right. So what we're saying is we need to put in place supports so that the workers in those businesses aren't going to be impacted. And some of the ideas that have been put around is during the pandemic, we had come up with supports to put in place to support those workers in certain sectors that were hard hit. At one point, we realized that everyone was being impacted by it, so we put in place something that was very broad. In this case, it'll be more targeted. There are specific sectors that will be harder hit than others. And so, yeah, we know that the Sioux is one of those communities that's going to be hard hit. Like other folks have mentioned, this is a town where steel is a very significant sector. And so there's a lot of workers whose jobs are on the line. We cannot let these workers behind me bear the brunt of this trade war. We have to have their back. And that's why I'm calling on Parliament to get together to get recalled, because we can't just wait 2 months. If these tariffs happen in a couple of days and then the impact starts to be felt by these workers, we can't wait till the end of March before any action is taken. That would be irresponsible, and that would let these workers down. That's why I'm being very serious. We got to recall Parliament, as the Conservative leader said as well, recall Parliament, and then put in place protections that support these workers. Targeted supports for workers that are in sectors that are hard hit and are specifically targeted by these tariffs. And let's put that in place so we're ready to go, so we can defend these workers, defend these jobs.
Thank you. Last question in the room is from Rick from We Love Community TV in Sault Ste. Marie.
Good morning, Jagmeet. Welcome to the community. My question, of course, is about housing and how we're facing a crisis. If we get more unemployment within this community, is going to be a drastic problem in Sault Ste. Marie, despite some funding coming from the province, the Heart House, and so on and so forth. But it's come to my attention by one of our viewers that there are companies from down south who are buying up apartment buildings here that are, how to say it, having people sign agreements that require a tenant's, it's not a bad thing, but require tenants to have a tenant's insurance package. Now, with seniors on fixed incomes and lower income people within our communities across this country, that will not be doable for many people. They'll have to choose between bread and insurance because insurance isn't cheap. Your thoughts on this question, and is there anything the NDP party can do to squash this thing that apparently is happening right now, right here in this issue? I've got footage of it and so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. And you're right to say any additional cost on particularly seniors who are on a fixed income is going to hurt. Like if you're already barely getting by with the cost of your rent, cost of groceries, any additional cost on that is going to be really hard to bear. So that's a good point. But you also pointed out something that is happening more and more across Canada. When we talk about the housing crisis, you talked about a U.S. company buying up an apartment building. We are seeing in Canada across the board affordable homes being bought up by big corporate landlords. If you go back about 20 years, it was almost 0% that corporate landlords owned Canadian affordable homes. Now, more than 20%, so 1 in 5 apartment, 1 in 5 affordable home in Canada is bought up by corporate landlords who then jack up the rents. So one of the things that we've called for is let us ban corporations from buying affordable homes in our country. Let's keep those affordable homes affordable. We've got a serious housing crisis, and the only way we can fight back is going after some of the root causes. And one of them is big corporations scooping up affordable homes because they see a profit to be made in Canada. Housing should be for people to have a home. It shouldn't be all about a rich investor making a buck. That approach has resulted in housing prices that are out of control, rents that are out of control, and only getting worse. So we are committed to defending Canadians, not just from tariffs, but also from corporations that are ripping you off. And so one of the things that we've proposed and we'll fight for is to ban corporations from buying affordable homes. We want to see these buildings bought by not-for-profits, bought and turned into cooperatives, so where every individual that lives in the apartment is an owner, and so they can keep their rents affordable because that's their interest. We need to build homes with government funding so that they're kept affordable for people to buy or to rent. We need affordable homes, and we need massively. New Democrats are committed to that.
Nous allons maintenant prendre les questions en ligne. We will now take questions online. On va commencer avec Juliane Lapointe avec Radio-Canada. C'est à vous.
Bonjour, Monsieur Singh.
Bonjour.
J'aimerais vous entendre justement sur votre message aujourd'hui. Vous ne pensez pas que vous avez un double discours d'une certaine façon de dire que vous pourriez aider à faire passer un plan d'aide pour les travailleurs s'il y a des tarifs, mais que vous voulez aussi faire tomber le gouvernement dès la première occasion? Comment on peut ne pas voir là une contradiction?
Il n'y a aucune contradiction. Le gouvernement, à ce moment, a prorogé le Parlement. Donc, ça veut dire qu'on va retourner au fin de mars. Fin de mars, on va avoir des votes de confiance. On va voter contre ça. Ça ne change pas. Mais avant ça, on a 2 mois. Donc, est-ce que le gouvernement libéral propose de faire rien pour 2 mois? Faire rien pour aider ses travailleurs? Faire rien pour appuyer les travailleurs impactés par les tarifs? Ça, c'est une position inacceptable. Donc, ça, c'est pourquoi on demande que le gouvernement rappelle le Parlement, présente un projet de loi pour appuyer les travailleurs. On peut passer ça avant d'avoir une élection parce qu'on va voter contre le gouvernement au fin de mars. Cet horaire ne change pas. On a dit qu'on va voter contre le gouvernement le fin de mars. Ça continue. On va voter contre le gouvernement. Mais avant de ça, on a 2 mois et on a des tarifs qui s'en viennent dans quelques jours. Est-ce que le gouvernement libéral propose de faire rien pour 2 semaines, 2 mois, quand les travailleurs souffrent? Ça, c'est inacceptable. Ça, c'est pourquoi je demande que le gouvernement rappelle le Parlement, comme un autre chef d'opposition a dit, Pierre Poilievre a dit la même chose, rappelle le Parlement, puis on peut appuyer les travailleurs et on va voter contre le gouvernement après ça.
Mais donc, d'une certaine façon, vous appuyez le gouvernement, ensuite vous le faites tomber. Là, il y a même l'ancien chef Thomas Mulcair qui dit que vous faites un peu du flip-flop, vous êtes en train comme de jouer sur 2 tableaux. Même le NPD, là, certains du NPD se disent qu'il y a quelque chose qui ne fonctionne pas là-dedans. Comment vous rétablissez le message?
Est-ce qu'il dit la même chose à Pierre Poilievre? Pierre Poilievre a dit qu'on doit rappeler le Parlement. Est-ce qu'il dit qu'il est flip-flop? On doit demander pourquoi il n'a pas le même propos pour ces 2 choses, des demandes qui sont presque la même chose. On demande que le Parlement, on demande le gouvernement de rappeler le Parlement. Sinon, on va avoir 2 mois où le Parlement ne fait rien pour appuyer ses travailleurs. Est-ce que ça, c'est une position raisonnable? Non, pas du tout. On va voter contre le gouvernement au fin de mars. Avant de ça, avec une guerre des tarifs, avec la menace des tarifs, avec la menace sur les emplois canadiens, on doit faire quelque chose. Je suis sûr que tous les chefs d'opposition vont voter en faveur d'un projet de loi qui aide les travailleurs impactés par les tarifs. Je ne peux pas comprendre pourquoi un chef d'opposition va voter contre une mesure qui aide les travailleurs. Donc, si le gouvernement est sérieux parce qu'il propose des mesures pour aider les travailleurs, rappelle le Parlement, présenter ce projet de loi et passer ce projet de loi dans le Parlement avant la fin de mars, parce que fin de mars, on va voter contre le gouvernement.
We'll now go to Mackenzie Gray with Global. Please go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Singh. So just to be clear, will the NDP support the government in any confidence votes past March 31st?
We have said very clearly, and I thank you for the question because I can repeat this again. We will be voting against the government when we return to Parliament end of March. We'll be voting against the government, and there will be an election in spring. But before that time, there is 2 months. So is the Liberal government proposing that we do nothing for 2 months? That these workers behind me who are worried about tariffs, if those tariffs are imposed in February, will get no support for 2 months? What would that mean to a worker that's living paycheck to paycheck? They're not going to be able to afford their mortgage, their rent. They're not going to be able to buy groceries. So is the Liberal government seriously saying they're going to do nothing for these workers for 2 months and just wait till the end of March? I think that is wrong. So I'm calling on government, if they're serious about helping out these workers, recall Parliament right away. Let's put in targeted supports for these workers and the communities impacted by these tariffs that are going to potentially happen in a couple of days. And if they do not call back Parliament, if the Liberals don't call back Parliament, then we know all of this bluster about a plan for workers was all for show. It was all fake. If they're serious, call back Parliament. As the Conservative leader has also said, call back Parliament and let's get to work for these workers.
Parliament is not set to come back until March 24th. It would be very unlikely that between that day and the end of March, the government and your party or any other parties would be able to pass any legislation to help out workers. So again, if Parliament comes back on the 24th and there is no tariff help for workers, you will vote to bring down the government at any available date past March 31st. We'd just like some clarity because your position has been moving on this issue.
Not at all. It's not changed at all. We said I was going to vote against the government when they come back end of March. I'm saying that again today. We absolutely can pass legislation. We've done it in the past. We absolutely could pass legislation if the Parliament is recalled now. We've got lots of time to get Parliament to get this passed. It can be fast tracked. It can be done very quickly. So don't listen to any spin that suggests that we don't have time. We're in January right now. We absolutely have time to pass supports for workers. No question about it. It can be brought in Parliament, passed quickly, even passed through the Senate. Absolutely, it can be done. And it has been done before. We did it during the pandemic. So this is what I want to be very clear on. I'm concerned the Liberals are spinning people, making it seem like they care. But now I'm saying, well, do it then. If you're serious about supporting these workers, let's call Parliament back and get it done. But it does not seem to me that they're serious. It seems to me that is all for show. I want these workers to get support. So I'm calling their bluff. I'm calling the bluff of the Liberals and saying, let's get Parliament back going. Let's get supports in place. Let's make sure these workers know that we've got their back. Let's put in place legislation that supports them. Because we will be voting against the government at the end of March. We will be voting against the government at the end of March. Please ask me again because I'll repeat that again.
We'll now go to Nuju Delmalis with the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Hi, this question is for Ms. Bruske, but also anyone else who wants to jump in. There's been increased interest in tackling internal trade barriers in the country, in part to strengthen the Canadian economy against the threat of U.S. tariffs. That includes addressing barriers to labor mobility. And so I guess from a labor perspective, I'm hoping to get your thoughts on what are some of the barriers standing in the way of workers' ability to work across the country.
So we think that labor mobility is already, quite frankly, well supported with programs like the Red Seals for skilled trades and various different healthcare recognition and various different healthcare professions. There's always work that can be done in those particular fields, and we would work with levels of government to continue to do that work. But right now, the priority has to be safeguarding Canadian jobs across the country, and I don't think that the provincial component is that much of an issue. We think that this is an opportunity that big business is using to really push deregulation and to look at cuts to red tape that they would like that create other issues for labor. So we really think that we need to keep our focus on our international trade aspect right now, diversify, find new markets for the goods and services that our workers produce, and to make that a priority at this moment in time.
As a follow-up for Mr. Singh, I'd like to get your thoughts on interprovincial trade barriers. Do you think it's a problem? Would you like to see that addressed? And I guess part two of that question is things like supply management also serve as an internal trade barrier, also an irritant with trading partners like the US. Would you like to see potential change on that?
When it comes to one of the things that I want to clarify around when we have regulations or laws in place, we want to be careful about how we characterize them. A lot of laws are protections for the consumer and protection for the workers. And so we don't want to compromise protection for consumers. We want to make sure they're protected. And we don't want to compromise rules that protect workers as well. When it comes to interprovincial trade, there's ways for us to look at improving that, and I think we absolutely should look at that. As long as we don't compromise on our safety rules, on protection for workers, then yes, absolutely, we need to have better trade between provinces, no doubt about it. And so yes, that's something that I think we need to explore. I think for far too long we've had barriers that don't need to be there, and those can be addressed. The focus, though, should be about how we diversify our economy. As Bea Bruske, as the president of CLC, said, we want to diversify our economy. We want to fight back against the tariffs in the United States. And so that's our major priority. When it comes to supply management, we have long been in support of it. It's something that allows dairy and poultry or dairy and egg producers to be able to earn a decent living. And so we think it's a strong program. It's a good program. We would defend that unequivocally. But when it comes to the fight in front of us, the fight is we got Donald Trump threatening a tariff that could mean across Canada, literally hundreds of thousands of jobs. And some people have said even more than that. So this is a very serious threat to Canada. It would massively impact our economy, but more importantly, it would massively impact workers. And our focus is let's fight back and stop these tariffs before they happen. And if the tariffs happen, let's put in supports for these workers.
Thank you very much. This is all the time we have for today. C'est le temps qu'on a pour aujourd'hui. Merci beaucoup. This concludes our press conference. Ceci conclut notre conférence de presse.
All right. Thanks so much. A big shout out to the workers behind me. A round of applause. You guys are amazing. Big shout out to steelworkers for being in their halls. Shout out to steelworkers. And big shout out to CLC for all the great work they do. Thank you so much.